Have you ever felt completely confused by a woman's behavior? One day she seems incredibly close to you. The next day she's quieter, more relaxed, and not constantly seeking your attention. Most men see this and immediately assume the worst. They think she's losing interest. They think the spark is fading. They think she's slowly pulling away. But what if the exact opposite is true? What if some of the strongest signs that a woman has fallen deeply in love with you don't look romantic at all? The truth is, most men have been taught to recognize love through obvious signals, constant texting, endless compliments, physical affection, and nonstop attention. While those things can certainly be signs of attraction, they aren't always the clearest indicators of deep emotional attachment. Real love affects a woman differently. It changes how she thinks, what she prioritizes, and how safe she feels around someone. And once you understand these deeper signs, you'll stop making one of the biggest mistakes men make in relationships, confusing emotional security with emotional distance. The first sign is surprisingly simple. She stops trying to be perfect around you. Think about the early stages of attraction. Most people put their best foot forward. They carefully choose their words. They hide their flaws. They try to appear confident, attractive, and emotionally composed. Women are no different. When a woman is still trying to win your approval, she's often focused on showing you the most polished version of herself. She wants you to see her strengths. She wants to make a good impression. She wants you to admire her. But something fascinating happens when her feelings become deeper. The mask slowly starts to disappear. She lets you see her when she's exhausted. She talks to you when she's stressed. She doesn't feel the need to look perfect every time you're together. She becomes comfortable showing you the parts of herself that most people never get to see. And here's what many men misunderstand. This isn't laziness. It's not a loss of attraction. It's not her taking you for granted. It's trust. Psychologists often describe emotional intimacy as the willingness to reveal parts of ourselves that carry the risk of rejection. In other words, the more emotionally invested someone becomes, the less energy they spend pretending to be perfect. Why? Because deep down they want to be loved for who they really are. A woman who is deeply attached to you no longer wants to impress you every second. She wants to be understood by you. And there's another subtle clue that often appears alongside this behavior. She becomes surprisingly quiet about other men. She doesn't constantly bring up guys who flirt with her. She doesn't talk endlessly about ex-boyfriends. She doesn't create unnecessary jealousy to get your attention. In fact, it's almost as if the competition disappears from her mind altogether. This happens because emotional attachment changes a person's focus. When a woman genuinely loves someone, her attention naturally becomes centered on that relationship. The need to advertise other options starts fading because emotionally, she's already chosen where her heart belongs. Ironically, many men misread this silence. Instead of recognizing it as commitment, they become suspicious. They assume she's hiding something. But often the truth is much simpler. She's no longer looking around because she's already looking at you. And that's what makes this first sign so powerful. When a woman allows you to see her imperfect side, lowers her emotional defenses, and stops feeling the need to prove her value every moment, she's showing something far deeper than attraction. She's showing trust. And trust is often the first true foundation of deep love. But that's only the beginning, because the next sign reveals something she may be doing for you behind your back. And most men never even realize it's happening. Most men believe love is measured by what a woman does when she's with them, the affection, the attention, the compliments, the time she gives them. But some of the strongest signs of genuine love happen when you're not even in the room. In fact, one of the most powerful indicators that a woman is deeply attached to you is something you'll probably never witness directly. She protects your image when you're absent. Think about that for a moment. When people criticize someone, it's easy to stay silent. It's easier to avoid conflict, nod along, and move on with the conversation. That's what most people do when the person being discussed doesn't matter much to them. But when a woman genuinely loves you, something changes. Your reputation becomes personal to her. If friends question your intentions, she speaks up. If family members unfairly judge you, she defends you. If coworkers or acquaintances make disrespectful comments about you, she feels compelled to correct them. Not because she believes you're perfect, not because she thinks you never make mistakes, but because your value matters deeply to her. Psychologically, this happens because emotional attachment creates a shared identity. The relationship stops feeling like you and me and begins feeling like us. When someone attacks your character, it doesn't just affect you. It affects the bond she's emotionally invested in. And here's what makes this sign even more powerful. A woman who truly loves you may defend you even during times when she's personally upset with you. Think about that. Even after an argument, even when she's frustrated, even when she disagrees with something you've done, she still doesn't allow outsiders to disrespect you. That level of loyalty is rare. And although you may never hear those conversations, there are often subtle clues. Pay attention to how people around her speak about you. Do they seem careful with their words? Do they treat you with unexpected respect? Do they avoid making jokes at your expense? Sometimes that's because she's already made her position clear long before you arrived. A woman who loves you often fights quiet battles you'll never know existed. But that's only one side of the story. Because deep emotional attachment doesn't just affect how she talks about you, it affects what she remembers about you. Have you ever casually mentioned something and forgotten about it completely, only for her to bring it up weeks later? Maybe it was a favorite childhood snack, a movie you loved growing up, a place you've always wanted to visit, or a dream you mentioned for only a few seconds during a random conversation. You forgot it. She didn't. Weeks or even months later, she surprises you with that exact detail, and suddenly you realize something important. She was listening much more carefully than you thought. This happens because love changes attention. When a woman becomes emotionally invested, your words carry more weight than they do for anyone else. Her brain naturally treats information connected to you as important. She's not forcing herself to remember. She remembers because she cares. And what makes this so meaningful isn't the memory itself. It's what she does with it. She turns small details into thoughtful actions. She remembers your favorite food when you've had a stressful day. She recalls stories from your childhood. She notices what motivates you, what frustrates you, and what makes you smile. Over time, she begins building a mental map of who you really are. Not the version you show the world, but the version hidden underneath. And that's something many men completely overlook. They notice the gift, they notice the gesture, but they miss the real message behind it, the fact that she remembered. Because people who aren't emotionally invested don't study your life. They don't store away tiny details for months. They don't pay attention to the little things you barely notice yourself. But a woman who is deeply attached to you does, because understanding you becomes important to her. And in the next section, we're going to talk about the sign that confuses almost every man. The moment she becomes comfortable being completely silent with you, and why that silence may actually reveal more love than 1,000 conversations ever could. Now, we're about to talk about the sign that confuses more men than almost any other. In fact, it's responsible for countless misunderstandings, unnecessary arguments, and even the end of relationships that were actually becoming stronger. The sign: she becomes comfortable being silent with you. At first, that might not sound romantic at all. Most people associate love with excitement. They picture endless conversations, constant texting, late-night phone calls, and the feeling of never running out of things to say. And during the early stages of attraction, that's often exactly what happens. Everything feels new. Every conversation feels exciting. You both want to learn everything about each other, but real emotional intimacy evolves. And when it does, something interesting begins to happen. The need for constant stimulation slowly fades. A woman who feels deeply connected to you no longer feels pressure to fill every moment with words. She can sit next to you without talking. She can read a book while you're working. She can scroll through her phone while you're watching a game. She can simply exist in the same space as you without feeling uncomfortable. And for many men, this creates panic. They start asking themselves questions. Is she bored? Did I do something wrong? Is she losing feelings? Why doesn't she seem as excited as before? But often they're interpreting the situation completely backwards because emotional safety doesn't always look exciting. Sometimes it looks peaceful. Think about it this way. When you're around strangers, you're usually aware of yourself. You monitor your behavior. You think about what to say next. You feel pressure to keep interactions flowing. But when you're around people you completely trust, that pressure disappears. You don't feel the need to perform. You don't feel the need to impress. You simply relax. The same thing happens in love. A woman who is deeply attached to you often reaches a point where your presence alone becomes comforting. She doesn't need constant entertainment. She doesn't need endless conversation. She enjoys simply being near you. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as emotional security, the feeling that someone's presence is safe enough that your nervous system can finally relax. And when that happens, silence stops feeling awkward. It starts feeling peaceful. In fact, some of the strongest relationships in the world are built on this exact foundation. Not endless excitement, not constant drama, but comfort. The ability to sit together and feel connected without needing words. Unfortunately, many people mistake this stage for the loss of chemistry. They're so addicted to the emotional highs of the beginning that they fail to recognize the deeper bond developing underneath. Excitement creates attraction, but peace creates attachment, and attachment is what lasts. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. Once a woman reaches this level of emotional security, another subtle shift begins happening, often without her even realizing it. She starts including you in her future, not necessarily through dramatic conversations about marriage or lifelong commitments. Sometimes it's much smaller than that. She starts planning around you. When she thinks about a trip, she automatically wonders if you'll be available. When she hears about an event, her first thought becomes whether you'd enjoy it too. When opportunities appear in her life, she naturally considers how those choices might affect the relationship. Notice what's happening here. She's no longer viewing life entirely through an individual lens. Emotionally, she's beginning to see the two of you as connected. Not because she's losing her independence, not because she's becoming dependent, but because you've become part of the picture she sees when she imagines tomorrow. And that's one of the clearest signs that her feelings have moved beyond attraction and into something much deeper. Because when a woman starts unconsciously making space for you in her future, she's revealing something powerful. You're no longer just part of her present. You're becoming part of her vision for what's next. And in the next section, we'll uncover one of the most misunderstood signs of all. How the way she handles conflict can reveal whether her love is truly deep, and why the women who care the most often argue very differently from everyone else. Most men believe that if a woman argues with them, it means something is wrong with the relationship. And sometimes that's true, but not always. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes men make is assuming that conflict automatically means a woman is losing feelings. The reality is often far more complicated because when a woman truly loves you, the way she handles conflict begins to change. And if you pay attention, you'll notice a difference between a woman who wants to win an argument and a woman who wants to save the relationship. At first glance, both may seem upset. Both may raise concerns. Both may express frustration, but their goals are completely different. A woman who is emotionally checked out often stops investing energy into fixing problems. She becomes indifferent. She stops trying to explain herself. She stops caring whether things improve because in her mind the relationship is no longer worth fighting for. But a woman who deeply loves you usually does the opposite. She brings problems to the surface. She wants answers. She wants understanding. She wants resolution. Not because she enjoys conflict, but because the relationship matters too much to ignore what's hurting it. Think about it. People rarely fight for things they don't care about. They walk away from those. They become emotionally detached from those. But when someone is deeply invested, they struggle, they communicate, and sometimes they argue because they desperately want things to get better. This is why many men completely misunderstand emotionally attached women. They see complaints and assume rejection. They see frustration and assume loss of attraction. What they fail to see is the emotional motivation underneath. A woman who loves you isn't usually fighting against you. She's fighting for the connection she doesn't want to lose. That's an important distinction. And here's something even more revealing. When a woman deeply loves you, her focus during conflict slowly shifts from being right to finding a solution. Of course, she's still human. She may become emotional. She may say things imperfectly. She may get frustrated. But underneath all of that, her real goal is repair. She wants the relationship to heal. She wants trust restored. She wants both of you to feel understood. That's why you'll often notice her returning to unresolved issues. Not because she's trying to punish you, not because she enjoys bringing up problems, but because emotional wounds don't disappear, simply because they're ignored. She keeps revisiting them because she still believes they're worth fixing. And that belief says something powerful. It means she still sees a future worth protecting. Now, does that mean every argument is healthy? Of course not. Love doesn't excuse disrespect, manipulation, or toxic behavior. But healthy conflict often looks very different from what people imagine. Sometimes it looks like difficult conversations. Sometimes it looks like uncomfortable honesty. Sometimes it looks like two people struggling to understand each other because they care too much to pretend everything is fine. And here's the part most people never talk about. A woman who truly loves you is often more afraid of losing the relationship than she is concerned about winning the argument. Read that again. She's more focused on preserving the connection than proving a point. That's why, after a disagreement, she eventually reaches back out. That's why she looks for compromise. That's why she continues trying to communicate even when it's difficult. Because beneath the frustration is something much deeper, emotional investment. The relationship still matters. And when someone genuinely loves you, they don't look for reasons to destroy what you've built. They look for ways to strengthen it. But there's one final sign that ties everything together. A sign so powerful that once it appears, it changes the way she experiences your entire life. Because when a woman's love reaches its deepest level, something remarkable happens. Your victories start feeling like her victories. Your pain starts affecting her heart, and your happiness becomes connected to her own. In the final section, we'll explore the ultimate sign of deep emotional love and why it's the clearest proof that her heart is fully invested in you. Now, we've reached the final sign, and in many ways, it's the most powerful of them all. Because this is the moment when love stops being something a woman simply feels and starts becoming something she lives. It's the point where your happiness begins affecting her as if it were her own. Think about that for a second. Most people are naturally focused on their own lives, their own goals, their own victories, their own problems. But when a woman falls deeply in love, something remarkable begins to happen. The emotional boundaries between your world and her world start to blur. Your success genuinely makes her happy. Not because she's pretending, not because she feels obligated, but because your joy creates real joy inside of her. When you achieve something important, she feels proud. When you reach a goal you've worked hard for, she celebrates it. When life finally gives you a win after a difficult period, she feels excitement almost as if the victory belongs to her too. And that's incredibly rare because true love isn't just about wanting someone. It's about emotionally investing in their well-being. A woman who deeply loves you doesn't compete with your success. She doesn't feel threatened by your growth. She wants to see you win. She wants to see you become the best version of yourself. And perhaps even more importantly, she wants to be there when it happens. But this emotional connection works both ways. Because when you're hurting, she feels that too. Your stress affects her. Your disappointments weigh on her mind. Your struggles become something she carries emotionally, even when she can't fix them. Have you ever noticed a woman becoming concerned about a problem you're facing before you've even fully processed it yourself? She keeps asking if you're okay. She checks in on you unexpectedly. She senses when something feels off. That's not coincidence. That's emotional attachment. When someone truly loves you, your emotional state begins influencing theirs. Your pain matters because you matter, and this is where many men miss the deeper meaning behind love. They focus only on grand romantic gestures, the dramatic declarations, the constant affection, the movie-style moments. But deep love is often much quieter than that. It's found in the little things. The way she remembers details you forgot mentioning, the way she defends your name when you're not around, the way she feels comfortable sitting beside you in complete silence, the way she naturally includes you in plans for the future, the way she fights to repair the relationship instead of destroy it, and finally, the way your happiness becomes connected to her own. These behaviors may not seem dramatic, but they're far more meaningful than temporary excitement because attraction can create passion, but emotional loyalty creates permanence. And that's what separates infatuation from genuine love. The truth is, many men spend years looking for proof that a woman loves them while completely overlooking the signs right in front of them. They mistake comfort for boredom. They mistake peace for a lack of chemistry. They mistake emotional investment for control. And in doing so, they miss the very things that reveal the deepest level of connection. So if you're fortunate enough to recognize these signs in a woman, don't take them lightly. Because what you're witnessing isn't surface-level attraction. It's trust. It's loyalty. It's emotional commitment. It's the kind of connection that very few people ever experience in a truly meaningful way. At the end of the day, deep love isn't always loud. It doesn't always arrive with dramatic speeches or constant attention. Sometimes it reveals itself in the quietest moments, in the way she remembers, in the way she protects, in the way she supports, in the way she stays. And when a woman reaches that point, she's no longer just sharing her time with you. She's sharing her heart. So here's a question for you. Which of these signs have you experienced in a woman you cared about? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more insights as we continue to decode her.